I'm Jeff St Laurent. Tuesday call, back at you again. Always get some good excitement. We get some good, consistent people on the line. I love having this. I love interacting with people. And I always say this to you is, as you build your audience, there's the two elements to our business. And really it's our whole business, like any business, but especially as a coach. It's build your audience, engage with your audience. Build your audience, engage with your audience. It's the number one thing, or those two things are the top two things you'll be doing through your whole business is building your audience and engaging your audience. And so everything that we talk about is going down that direction. So before we get started, just to make you aware of this, I always record these calls. That I post them at the end of the week, usually on Fridays in my university. So on my website, sellingcoaching.com, and then always under the university, I post these, and then there are a lot of other Tuesday calls, a lot of great information there. And then also there's a lot of other great quick, 1 to 3 minute videos. I probably got about like 80 videos in there, and I'm adding to them all the time. So great resource for you. I always appreciate as well if other coaches who are looking to transition to full-time or getting into that spot. That's what I do with coaches, is really helping them transition to full-time, because we're so passionate about it, but there's so much information as I want to just help narrow that down and really focusing on how do we get to full-time, but really on the selling and the marketing aspect. So if you know anyone who could benefit from these calls, any of the recordings, or even the Selling Coaching private Facebook group. I know a lot of you are in that as well. I always appreciate referrals and spreading the word for this stuff. It's part of why I do what I do in terms of this education, and I recommend you do the same. Is when you deliver valuable content, you can get some great information out there, and hopefully people will spread the word as well. If you're not in my private Facebook group, you can always check it out. I'd love to have you in there. Easiest way to do it is go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, and right at the top of basically every page, you'll see a link that takes you right over to the group. And if you go ahead and join, I can approve you, and we'll be a part of that group. And that's a great place to engage. And also, before we get started, if you are serious about moving forward with your coaching business, looking for full-time, and you don't want to do it alone, or you can't do it alone, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring, and you can always reach me directly through my website. You can just go to the contact page and email me there, and we can respond and move forward in that direction. So today, one of the things that we're really going to be focusing on is how do we use seminars to get clients? And I started doing full-time coaching in 2004, and the first 10 years of my business was all about live events, and that's pretty much all I did. That's how I got my word out there. It's how I marketed my business, was live events. And if you were to ask me, what is the number one way to get clients? By far, any other way. And I would say that's through live speaking engagements, meaning you getting your ass out in front of people face to face and speaking to them. In terms of the size of the audience, it doesn't matter. Obviously, it's great to speak to larger crowds. However, if you've got an audience of 1, 2, 5, 10, and most likely that's going to be the reality when you're starting off, and even if you've been doing it for years. My mentor coach, one of the first person that I worked with, he had a seminar coaching company, and he was doing $3 to $4 million a year with his coaching company, his seminar company, and he would be on the road and speaking every single weekend of the year, literally. And I learned from him, and one of the biggest things I learned is that hey, it's not all glamour. Sometimes they'll travel across the country and show up, and there's 5, 6 people in the room. And I've done the same thing. I've traveled many different places, and whether it's driving and or flying, and there's a handful or there's a dozen people. And what you want to know from that is it doesn't matter. And obviously, the larger you get more opportunity to touch more people. But the first tip I'll give you in terms of how we're using seminars to get clients is always do the event. Always do the event. I can't tell you how many times, my former life, if you will, my former career, I was a personal trainer. I grew up in the fitness industry doing training and things like that. And so naturally, when I started doing coaching and doing some events, I had a lot of connections with health clubs. So that's where I started doing a lot of my events, like in the group fitness rooms, and even just pulling some chairs aside in like break rooms, because I had those connections and people liked what I did for fitness wise. So I'm like, hey, would it be okay if I came in and talked to your members or talked to your staff about different things? And they're like, sure, yeah, come on in, and it was a added benefit for them, give value to their members, and it got me exposure to some people that I otherwise wouldn't have done it. And sometimes I did complimentary events, sometimes I did longer events, maybe 90 minutes or an hour or so, where it charged, $15 or something like that. And I can't tell you how many nights where I had the event that night and I would call, that day and say, hey, how's everything going? How's registration? We good? And they're like, yeah. Or maybe they'd email or call me and let me know and say, hey, Jeff, we've got, 2 people signed up for the event, or we've only got 1 person signed up. Do you want me to cancel it? And I was so tempted to say yes, because it's like, oh, especially when I had an hour drive or something like that. And, but I always said, no, I'm coming in. I'm showing up, and I said, let's call that person and confirm that they're coming, and let's make sure of that. But I always showed up, and I can't tell you how many times that those events where I've had, between 1 and 5 people, sometimes those are the best events that you'll have, because, it's a different setting. It's a lot more intimate. It's basically like a small group coaching setting. Whereas if you get into larger, even medium-sized crowds, maybe 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and then obviously much higher than that, it limits it. It's a different style of teaching, and so there's always opportunities with that. So, like I said, if I had to, if you were going to get clients, I would say the number one thing you do is live events, and even more so than like this. This is a live speaking event, right? You're all on the phone. I'm speaking live. You're my audience. The only difference is you're not sitting right in front of me, right? These events can be just as effective as well. However, a live event, I would say they're effective, but not as effective as a live event, because there's something about face-to-face that makes it work for you. If your business model, doesn't allow that, or you don't want to do that, like I transitioned last year from going pretty much 100% face-to-face, and now I'm 100% virtual. It still works. It doesn't mean I'll never do a live event again, but I know for myself, like I want my son to be older before I start traveling again. That's my main reason for doing that. But I also want to build my audience more, so I can start doing more of my own events. Because when you do events, the biggest thing about it is that if you're just doing the event yourself and you're hosting it and you're inviting, the challenge is getting people in the seats. Whereas if you're showing up and you already have an audience ready, like someone's bringing you in to speak, that's a more ideal situation. But in terms of how to get clients from this, I want you to think about this, and this is the mindset behind events. The reason why seminars, live events, face-to-face, is unequivocally the best way to get clients is because people get to really experience you. And when I say experience you, it's similar to video format. That's why I'm always really pushing videos for people, and obviously in my Facebook group and doing those video challenges. But live events, you really get to see who this person is. You get a sense of their energy. There's nothing better than when you make eye contact with someone, when you can shake their hand, when you can look into their eyes. You can feel the energy between people. You can feel the energy in the room. It's even unlike, even now, like on the phone, there's a certain energy on the phone, but what's missing is all of your inputs, because all of you are kind of on mute. So it's a completely different energy. Whereas when you're in a room and you're getting, let's say you're going down a heavier, more emotive type path with a story or a concept or a point, and maybe you're tearing up, or people in the room are tearing up, or there's a heavy emotion, you can feel that in the weight of the room. When you lighten it up and you bring some comedy or humor into it and pull people out of that heavier place, the whole room lightens up. So you get to go on this emotional journey with people. They really get to experience your personality, your humor. It's three-dimensional. So the emotion is three-dimensional. The space is three-dimensional, meaning, when I'm doing events, I don't just stand in the front, I move through the audience. So whatever the place is, I'm moving through the middle, I'm moving to the sides. And so that's where that space and that emotion becomes 3D. Whereas on a call like this, or even like on video format, you can still get that emotion, but it's not 3D, right? Everything is just, it's very flat. And there's other distractions right now. Like some of you right now, everyone's on mute. So some of you might be, folding laundry or getting lunch ready for your kids or yourself, or you're maybe doing something else. You're, replying to emails. So you're not as fully engaged in what you're doing, or there's distractions. Where at an event, it's like you could still be texting, but the point is ideally you're immersed in that event. And so I'm trying to paint the picture of why it elicits such a better response. And the best way I can describe it is everything is 3D, everything is immersed, everything's involved. And when someone goes through that situation, and I would assume that everyone here on the call at some point, and if you haven't already, I'm sure you will, has been at a live event, where a live educational type event, workshop, seminar. And when you get involved in that, you go to this certain space and you start reflecting upon, and you start seeing your world, your situations through, let's say, what that presenter is speaking on. And so now, the reason why it's a warp for people from going to, I don't know this person at all, to, let's say, wanting to hire you. There's a huge phase or a transition that someone has to go through in order to create that decision on working with you as a coach. It's a big decision, and a lot of people, or I would even say most people, they don't know they need a coach. They don't even really know what coaching is. And it's not so much coaching that they're buying, right? They're buying, hope. They're buying, a way or an avenue to get to where they want to go emotionally. And as they start to be immersed in this, if you will, 3D experience, they get to listen to you, and they begin to see through what you're speaking on how you can help them. And they start to experience that you understand them. You know what they're going through. You know what they feel like. You know what they struggle with. That's why I'm always a big advocate of when we speak, and I see this through the videos. If you're in the private Facebook group, where it's very real in emotion. So the more vulnerable you can be, and especially the more your niche or that one message you share with your audience comes from a space of, let's say, something you've worked through, or maybe you're still working through it, but you've gone a certain distance there and you've achieved some things, is that the reason why that's such a great place to begin your message from and your niche from is because if you're attracting those people, what they've experienced, because you've been there before. And for those of you that are starting off, as a coach, and no matter where you are along that journey going to full time, I've been there, and I still go through some of those emotions, and you always will. I had an email from a client this morning, and they were in a hard space right now. They were confused, and it's like they've been moving along, but yet it's like sometimes you can be moving along, and then you're down the road, 2 years down the road, and feel like, what have I really done? What am I really doing? So when you're in that space and there's other people around you as well, and they're connected with that, that's when people start to see you as understanding them, and they begin to trust you. And trust is a number one space where people deserve to get into to be able to work with you. So in terms of how to use seminars, just remember that number one, we've got to do them, but number two is that I'm trying to explain the process of an event, and what you can create in those situations, and the reason why you can get clients better there than anywhere else. And so while you're giving the event, one of the things that I really recommend doing during the event is, obviously, sharing stories, and concepts, but more sharing of experiences and emotions that bring people to these spaces. But whenever possible, I'll call this, if you will, selling from the stage, is you really want to be able to highlight what you do as a coach without necessarily saying, hey, hire me as a coach, right? That's just more of, like, not necessarily hard selling, but it's just like, hey, if you want to hire me as a coach, that means nothing to anybody. But what happens is as you start to go through and you speak, some of the things that I like to do is, if I'm referencing a point or a concept, I'll talk to and say, hey, these are some of the things I work through with one of my mentoring clients. You might hear me allude to that or say some of those things even on these calls. I bring those things out. I say, when I work with some of my mentoring clients, these are some of the things that we do, or these are some of the things that I can help you with when we work together one-on-one. I believe earlier in the call I said, if you were to ask me, I know even my email that I sent out yesterday for this call, I say, if you were to ask me as your mentor coach, or I were to work with you as your mentor coach, one of the first things I'd have you do if you were looking to get some clients would be set up an event, set up a live event, And so as you start to say these things, what you're doing is you're making people aware that, hey, this person works with people one-on-one. This person does coaching. And that's when people, especially if they're resonating with what you're saying or connecting with you especially, and they're seeing you as a person that could help them, that's when they start to become curious. So that's where at, let's say, the end of the event, if you say, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring, I'm available for one-on-one coaching. If this is something that's of interest to you, come see me at the back of the room afterwards. You can have that type of a call to action, and it can be very simple like that. At the beginning of the call today, right, I say, hey, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. If this is something of interest to you, you can get in contact with me directly through my website, right? So for those people that keep coming back and start seeing you live and in different mediums, through other marketing like email and things like that, they begin to develop this process of trust. But these live events are the ones that warp that forward because of that immersed emotional experience. And another thing, what's going to help you and how do you use these events to get clients is just naturally through the event and everything I described, that's going to elicit people to be that much closer to be at least seeing that they could work with you, or helping create an awareness of like what you actually do without actually having to say like, hey, I'm a coach and here's what I do. You basically say that throughout, like I said, throughout the event, and alluding to things like, well, I worked with one of these people I'm working with now, or one of my coaching clients I'm working with. They came to me feeling like X, Y, and Z. And one of the things they hired me for was this. And they were looking to do blah, 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 blah. And so when we started doing our work together, one of the biggest challenges that they had was they couldn't do X, Y, and Z. So through our coaching together, we created a plan, and here's an example of what they came up with. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, so see how I'm making this up as I go along, but this is how I would be speaking at my event. So I'm telling a story, but I'm telling a story of a client. I'm telling a story of maybe highlighting some of the things we did together. I might maybe finish off that point and say, share maybe some of the successes, but everything's relevant to what I'm actually talking about. So an audience member isn't sitting there going, I don't give a crap about this person, this client of yours. You're relating it to the audience, but it's just part of the story, of what you're doing there. But so those are some of the elements that you do to make people aware of it. But then also another thing, what's going to really help you get clients from seminars is think about it like this. Because as a coach, when you're starting off, and even down the road, your number one product initially is coaching, right? I mean, you can have other products, you can have other services that people can buy, but typically in the beginning, you're gonna have coaching. That's what people can buy from you. They can hire you as a coach, whether it's one-on-one or a group. So because of that, you have to remember, like, people don't understand what coaching is. And really what coaching is, at least the way I would define it, is really having this person who's objective, who's detached from your world, who's non-judgmental, their only agenda is wanting what you want. So it's helping you get clarity on, well, what is it that you want? Where do you want to go? How badly do you want that? And okay, so where are we at right now? And how can we get to where we want to go? Right? It's very simple. The coach honors that this person, you, the client, are the expert. Even if you don't believe you're the expert, I'm just here to help guide you in certain ways and champion you to move forward. And if you feel stuck or you feel like you're moving backwards, okay, so what? Where are we at now? Where do we want to go? Let's refocus on that goal and let's keep you moving in that direction. So, but people don't understand this. So, and you can't explain it. You could try, but that's not going to get them anywhere. So another great thing to do, and how we during the seminars to really, if you will, sell the value of our coaching and build that value, is through actually coaching people. So even in larger events, I mean, I've spoken to crowds of 500 or more, and I've still done this, what I'm about to share. So it's more easily done in smaller crowds. But you can do it. You can even do it in larger crowds. You just have to be able to, monitor the audience and keep the flow of it going. But basically, it's after certain points or concepts that you're delivering, it's doing two things. It's maybe creating some space where you can have some type of a breakout activity where people can discuss a point and then share. So for instance, let's say I talk about a point, or maybe to lead into a point, I have people start a discussion and I'll say, okay, we're gonna pair up. So everyone stand up. All right, pair up right now. I'll give you 10 seconds to find a person. If you can't find a person, raise your hand, find the other person that raises their hand and go find them, right? So everyone's paired up. And then they say, okay, person A is the one with the longest hair. Person B, you're the beautiful one, right? So they go second. So for when I say go, person A is going to talk for 2 minutes, and I'll tell you when the 2 minutes is up, and you're going to discuss blah, 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 all right? And then when I say time is up, that person B will talk. So then I say go, right? So person A talks, and everyone's going, and I say 2 minutes is up, and now person B goes, blah, 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 blah. And I say, great. And then I ask a question. Okay, what did you discover? What did you uncover? What did the person say? What did you say? And now I get some interaction. Everyone sits down, and now I can create some dialogue. And now what happens is I'm creating a space. This is the most important space for us as coaches. And initially, if you've never done this before, it can be scary because it's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? But this is where you kind of fall back on and trusting like all you're doing is coaching. All you're doing is coaching and just listening to the person and asking some more questions and letting them come up with the answer, letting other people in the audience come up with a solution. It's you just being detached and being very in that moment to understand, what's really being said, so you could be a really great and deep listener. I've gotten clients from events, and when I asked people, hey, what was it that initially sparked your interest in maybe thinking about or wanting to coach with me or wanting to talk to me in the first place? And they said, well, you know what? At the event, when you were talking with some of the participants and you were kind of like coaching them live, I could hear how you listened to them and how well you understood them. And you were hearing things that they weren't even saying, but you were pulling it out of them. And I thought like, oh my God, I need someone like this, or I need someone to help me like this, or this is the person that I know can help me get through this because they listen so well. So, and I always recommend whenever you work with somebody, or even even at the beginning of a complimentary session, even if they haven't hired you yet, I'll sometimes ask if I don't understand it already. Hey, why me, right? Why me? Why are you considering working with me as your mentor coach? How did this come to be? What's going through your head? I want to understand where that person's value is, and it's also I want to understand where my value is. So now I know the stuff I'm sharing with you isn't theory. I've gotten many clients over the years because of what I'm telling you about in this live coaching. This is one of the biggest aspects of how I've gotten clients. Because I've gotten that feedback from people. It's like, yeah, when you were doing this, and maybe it was the person I was actually coaching live with everybody, or maybe they were listening to the situation and they were experiencing it from a third party, but that's how they begin to saw the value in terms of what I did. Because like I said, coaching, the value of it is quite nebulous in the sense of, well, you listen and you ask questions and you're detached, like where's the value in that? But when they start to experience it or they see someone else experiencing it, that's the value of it. So you can elicit that through, like I said, like small little breakouts, pairing people up and then having a discussion as well. Another great way during events that works is, and this is just as you get more of a comfortability with speaking as well. So if some of the stuff I'm talking about freaks you out and thinking, oh, I don't know how I would do that, that's cool. Just start to know that this is where you definitely deserve to be working towards, because this is going to increase your odds of getting clients from an event. But another aspect is if you're aware of your audience and you're really grounded in the moment, as you're speaking about different things, naturally, and you've seen this before as well, and you've done it before as well, people are going to be expressing themselves during the event, meaning they'll be nodding their heads. They'll be, breathing heavy. They'll be exhaling some air. You'll feel some tense. You'll see someone writing some notes, voraciously on a sheet of paper. You'll see some people like kind of nudging each other or leaning in and whispering something, or you'll see somebody kind of like smirk or laugh, right? So I'm just trying to give you some different expressions that people will have. And so now, if it's appropriate in the sense of where you are in that space and what you're speaking about, this is, to me, this is what makes a live event a live event. And this is what it's really hard to, or impossible to do on a call, even a live event like this. So in those spaces, I'll draw that out, or I'll point it out, but not to make the person feel like, oh my God, I'm being singled out. But just naturally, I'll connect with them with eye contact, and I'm like, hey, I saw you smiling, or I see you keep writing notes. Like, what are you writing down? Like, I've done this, and if you do it in a very kind of comical yet not like I'm singling out everyone, look at this person type of way, but it's just a very casual, nonchalant, just like, oh my God, I can't help but notice how much you're nodding your head. I'm just curious, and that's that curiosity, right? I'm just curious, like what are you nodding your head about? And I'm telling you, every time I do this, even the shyest person, they'll share with you. And it's not like they're sharing into a microphone or whatever, but they'll share like, well, what you just said was so true. Like, and then I just find that's the opportunity to engage with them. All right. And I say, well, how does that relate to you right now? Or I'm just curious if you're willing to share, like, what are you experiencing in your world right now that's allowing you to resonate with this so much? And I'm telling you, it just works. People just start just giving some information, and then I'll draw the whole crowd in. I'll say it out loud if people can't hear it, if it's too loud of a crowd, or if I've got a lavalier microphone in a large crowd, I'll just rip it right off and I'll just give it to them, and they'll just I'll lean in and they'll talk into it if the person's willing to do that, so everyone can hear it. And I'll say, who else is experiencing this? And people start nodding their heads or raising their hands, and I'll be like, hey, look you're not alone, are you? Right? And so now I start to align the group with, okay, now people are feeling the same emotions. In some ways, I'm validating that person right there, and everyone else feels validated because, wow, they're not the only ones. And then I can decide, based on the time, the situation, and the information I'm delivering, how much time I can spend on that. Whenever I'm doing an event, I always like to plan less content than more content. And initially, as you're starting to do events, or if you've only done a handful of them, or you're set out to do your first one, typically the biggest fear is I'm not going to have enough to say. I've got 30 minutes. Oh my God, that's going to be like forever. How am I going to fill that time? So odds are you're going to feel like you're going to need to prepare more content than less content. That I have that all the time with my mentoring clients, and that's where I help people out in determining like, hey, I can help you lay out a seminar in terms of how to do this so you can feel confident that you have the right amount of information. But I always say is that I'd rather have less than more, because I want to find those times where I can interact with people, interact with that crowd. And so I'm trying to give you a few specific ways so you could walk away and maybe start to do this if you feel comfortable, or have a strategy on how to begin to do that. And like I said, those are the best ways, because typically at events, like even on a call like this, right? At the end of the call, when I'm done with this information, I say, okay, great, I'm going to unmute the line, and what questions do you have? What comments do you have? I'd love to hear from you, right? And it's crickets on the line, right? Everyone's just quiet, and some people are sitting there like, okay, well, I want to say something, and it's hard to elicit that. Same thing even at a live event, right? At a live event, you can say, okay, you can stop after a point and go, all right, who has questions, right? And no one raises their hand. Or there's always that one person that raises their hand. They just ask a million questions, and now you're afraid to even ask that question because that one person is going to ask this, another question and monopolize the whole event, right? So you're afraid to ask it at that point. So these strategies are just a lot more effective to elicit those commenting, and it's also a great way to get people to speak who normally wouldn't ever speak. And again, it's just those expressions. So people writing stuff down. I went through that one. People nodding their heads. People smiling and laughing. Especially I say when I do events, I urge you to move around. So not just be swaying and having all this frantic energy, but move to your spot. Like when I coach people on events and help them with their speaking, I do that with my mentoring clients, right? So one of the things I'll do is look at your floor space and figure out, what floor space do I have, and where am I going to move to? And so what I say is find your floor spaces, get to a spot, and talk in that spot. And I always like to say, ground your feet like an athlete. So those of you that are athletes, and if you're not, you've seen athletics before. And if you get an athletic stance, it's usually one foot in front of the other, typically a dominant foot. It's a little bit wider than your shoulder width, and it's kind of like almost like a baby squat. Knees are bent, hips are a little bit lowered. Obviously, in an extreme athletic position, like let's say football, you're going to get really down low, right? So now that's a really strong position because you got a low center of gravity and nice wide base. So same thing when you're speaking. Like I want you to get in a nice, just a little bit wider than your hips, a little bit bend in the knees, and I want your hands out in front of you. That's a very engaged, strong, powerful position. Move with your hands, but I keep my feet grounded. So my feet don't sway or lift. I actually just keep my feet grounded, and I might move and rotate my body with my hands, but I don't have that swaying energy. I'll make a point, and then I'll pause, and I'll move to another spot, and I'll ground myself, and I'll speak from that spot. And then I'll move to another spot, and I'll make another point. But I find those points to move around, and it's in those spaces, in the different, let's say zones of the room, of the audience, where that's where you can start to connect with those people. So that's where you can find the laughter and the nodding of the heads or writing it down. And it's you being observant, observant to the point where, I've been in different events and I've seen people, and like even people with notes, like I see people like with pages of notes, and I would just like stop, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, are those all those notes from right now, from what I've been saying? And then they're like, yeah, and I'm like, wow. Either you're just a really good note taker, or I'm just saying a lot of really great stuff. People laugh. So it's finding those places to kind of add that humor in, and then you can engage that person. And you say, well, I'm curious, what's one thing you wrote down? I'm curious, what are you receiving from this so far? And then that person says something, and so like it's in those moments where you can engage with people. And like I said, it's moving to those different spots of the room, and that's also allowing you. People are moving in their seats a little bit as well. So they're not just turning their heads. They might turn their bodies in their seats because, maybe you're off to the side. And again, it depends on the size of the room and or the size of the crowd as well. Obviously, smaller groups, you're not moving around as much. Typically, even if it's, eight or less people or so, and if it's in a small room, I might just actually sit down. I might actually get people in a circle and sit down. Because in a smaller group, it actually kind of feels weird. In a small room with a small group, it feels weird if you're standing up and they're sitting down. So I kind of like to get on the same level with them. It just changes the intimacy of it. It changes the emotion of it. It changes your connection with them. It allows you to kind of maybe feel like more equals, if you will. So those are just some different strategies. But again, I'll relate this back to these are some of the things of how we use seminars to get clients, because ultimately, this is what not only showcases in a very experiential way our coaching, because they're experiencing it, whether it's directly or from a third party observation wise, but that's where they begin to get the value of it. They understand it. They get immersed in those emotions, and they have those breakthroughs. They can create those breakthroughs. Even like on a call like this, some of you might be hearing some things. The breakthrough might be different, but at a live event, breakthroughs can be very, very powerful. And you can feel or you can hear them because people will, they'll let some air out. You'll just feel a shift in the room. And if the more practice you have with those, when you call out energy in the room, you can say, can you feel the tension in the room right now? Can you feel how the room just got so much lighter? Can you feel the positive energy in this room right now? You draw attention to that. People are like, yeah, and you're like, what is that? Right? This is exactly as a result of, blah, 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 blah. And it's, it reinforces maybe what you just spoke about and how energy and communication and things like that. And it's those things that really allow people to really see you as that person that can help them, because you're different. And that's the thing about us coaches, is that we're different, right? In a good way though. Different though, because we not only we care about people, but it's a different type of caring through listening. And in today's world, people don't listen. People don't take the time. Listening just really is slowing down and tuning everything else out, so I can really hear what you're saying, what you're really saying, and beyond the energy, beyond the tone, things like that, beyond the words. And that's where these events really shine through. And then it all comes down to, after the event's done, here's the key part, is the follow-up. That's another whole call. And I've done, if you go to the Selling Coaching University, sellingcoaching.com, under the university, go to the under the categories, go to the Tuesday calls, the recordings, and scroll through. There's definitely some calls on how to follow up, and how to qualify leads. And if you just type into even the search bar, qualifying leads, I know you'll pull up 5 or 6 videos on that as well. So I go into detail on that. That's vital, is after that event, is having some type of a call to action, type of a giveaway where people can raise their hands, and then they're sending you the emails, or they're texting you for this free giveaway, or this PDF of what you went through, or some more resources that you're offering. And that's also an easy, great way to kind of filter through all the participants, especially if you've got larger crowds. Sometimes you have access to emails or names and emails or phone numbers from the registration, and that's good. But it doesn't mean that everyone's interested just because they came to the event. I mean, if they came to your event, that's different. But when you say, hey, if you're interested in this, and let's say you've got, how about this, 50 people in the room, and you have an offer for the PDF of, let's say, your PowerPoint, and then some additional resources that you didn't have time to go over, something like that, or elaborating on some points there. And out of 50 people, 17 people, text or email you for that PDF. Well, now you start with those 17 people. Now I've got 17 people that I put my focus on to engage with, and not only send them what they requested, but say, hey, so great you can come to the event. Tell me a little bit more about your motivation of coming, or what's the number one thing you took away from the event, or how does that relate back to your life, and see if you can create that back and forth dialogue. And I would guarantee you that your clients are going to be, out of those 17 people, that's where your clients are going to be. And that just makes your job of following up even easier. You don't have to follow up with all 50 people. Doesn't mean you can't. It just means that the people that raise their hand, those are the people that are the most engaged, and that's where your clients are going to fall. Last thing I'll share before I open up the call, for some questions or comments, is, and I know I shared this on last week's call as well, but it's just a point it's worth reiterating about events. One of my mentoring clients a few weeks ago said, hey, Jeff, I want to get 5 clients this month. And I'm like, fantastic. He's like, what do you think I need to do in order to do that? I'm like, well, you need to speak in front of at least 100 people. And what I meant by that is that I know from my experiences, is that, if I can speak in front of 100 people, whether that's at once or 5 at a time, 20 at a time, however long or many events it takes me to speak in front of 100 people, if it took me 100 events with one person at a time, great, I'll get my 5 clients out of that. And some of you might think, oh my God, really 100 people to get 5 clients? Well, you know what? You could blow those results away, or you could get no clients out of it. Of course, right? But I've found on average, when I speak to 100 people or so, I'll get about 5 clients from that. I've done much better, and I've done worse than that as well. And I'm not saying that's the only thing you'll get from that, meaning there's a lot of other great things. If you have other products, you can get product sales from that. You can also get referrals for other speaking engagements. So a lot of other things can come from those events. But my main message is for about 5%. That's a rough figure right there of conversion. And longer term conversion is higher, meaning of those 100 people, assuming those are all, you get into your audience and your database and you keep engaging those people. Or at the beginning of the call, first thing I said was build your audience, engage your audience. Because remember, when it all relates back to selling is all about timing and a need, right? So if you have a need, that's one thing, but if the timing's not right, then it's useless. And because of that timing, that's why it's important for the continuous engagement of our audience. So I have things like my email list. Those of you that get my emails, right? I'm emailing you at a minimum 3 times a week, whether it's sharing some things about the call, just sharing some other things as well. I'm keeping you engaged. That's why I have my private Facebook group, because I'm in front of people all the time. People are posting, I'm commenting, I'm engaging with these people, I'm getting to know people. It's why I do these calls. It's engagement with my audience, right? I keep in front of them so I'm top of mind, because I know when the timing is right for somebody, I want to be there. I want my name to show up on their inbox that day, or a notification from my group to come into their inbox that day, because I know when they're ready to go, I want to be that person that they consider. And if I've been nurturing them and helping them out all along the way, it's only natural to think that that person would consider me. Same thing with you. It's only natural to think that that person would consider you. But it's that consistent engagement with those people that's vital. So out of those 100 people, to reinforce this point, you might get, let's say the 5% of those 5 clients from those 100 people. However, the other 95 people, they are on your database, they're in your group, they're in your forum, if you will, that you're engaging with multiple times a week, which is that vital engagement piece. So then, one by one, as time goes on, and let's say other people in that group, the timing is right for them, that's when, when you're in front of them, that's when all of a sudden they reach out, or you create a conversation, or they make some comments, and you follow up on those, and next thing you know, you get a client from that. So there's another percentage, on top of that 5% that will become clients or will buy some of your products and services, but that's time. And that's why it's vital we're consistent with that. And time can mean years. Honestly, I've had people 5, 7, 8 years. I think the longest one I've had is 8 years. Someone who was on my list for, let's say, 8 years and ultimately ended up hiring me. It actually just happened a few months ago, right? Someone from another lifetime. It was like they were still on my list and they still got my stuff, and next thing you know, they're emailing me and they hired me, 3 days later, and I'm like, wow, that is pretty cool, So that's the reality of it, but that's why we stay in the game and keep people engaged.